representatives of member states, financial and development institutions, UN agencies and stakeholder groups, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you on the occasion of the 15th anniversary of the International Center for Investigation of the El Niño ENSO phenomena. UNISDR sits on CIIFEN's board of directors, and we're very pleased to support a number of your activities and initiatives. One of these initiatives is recently developed CIIFEN UNISDR study on climate risk vulnerability. It will be published shortly and will present good practices for deepening our understanding of climate vulnerability. You know, 2 years ago, one of the strongest El Niño events ever measured was underway. It was already causing droughts and flooding in different parts of the world. Few sectors escaped its influence as it affected agriculture, food production, water availability, public health, and even energy supply. When the phenomenon was at its worst in November of last year, I was attending our Africa Regional Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction, and it was then estimated that something like 70 million people were struggling across the continent to cope and to feed their families. The worst drought to hit Ethiopia in 30 years coincided with the El Niño, leaving 10 million people struggling to find food and water. Botswana, Lesotho, Malawi, Namibia, Swaziland, Mozambique, and South Africa were all suffering from drought emergencies. And Africa was not alone. The phenomenon was also a threat to many countries across Asia and the Pacific, and of course here in the Americas. When it was first forecast, it stirred quite fearful memories in Peru of the over 9,300 people who lost their lives in the so-called mega niños of 1982-83 and 1997-98, along with GDP losses of 11.6% and 6.2% respectively. In the case of the 2015-2016 event, disaster preparedness paid off for many countries in the Americas. In Peru, there were 20 reported deaths and 13,000 people were left homeless between the onset of El Niño in February 2015 and its disappearance in May 2016. If we are to succeed in achieving the extremely ambitious targets for reducing mortality, reducing the number of disasters of affected people, reducing economic losses and damages to critical infrastructure, these goals, these targets set out in the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, then we need to follow the example of countries like Peru. National and local strategies for disaster risk reduction need to take account of the impacts of ENSO, of El Niño and La Niña, in the broader context of climate change and efforts to eradicate poverty. If these efforts are not aligned, then it will truly be impossible to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. A joint effort with organizations such as CIIFEN is necessary to translate the seasonal forecasts and risk data into risk-informed decision-making and actionable guidance so that different development sectors can take truly proactive measures. I would like to close by reaffirming UNISDR's strong commitment through its regional office to continue providing support to CIIFEN's efforts on climate risk management more generally across the entire region. UNISDR is also very pleased to support CIIFEN's activity, participation in international and regional seminars, conferences, and trainings to enhance understanding on climate and hydrometeorological risk more broadly. You know, the science of El Niño, of the ENSO, is probably one of the foremost urgent scientific questions to answer. How will climate change affect this, what is currently a natural variability? The possibilities range from increasing frequency and severity to changing the patterns, with enormous consequences for humanity. Your work today, your focus on ENSO and understanding its complexities and how they interact with human activity is absolutely fundamental. I wish you a very successful meeting and thank you for your attention.